So, um, good afternoon. I am Maurice, and along with my project peers, Jessica and Angelo, we are going to present to you the challenges of mental health and end of life. I will be covering more of the historic struggles that society placed upon this population. Before I get started, I would like to assure you that there is now no prejudice against any group of people, whether religious or cultural. Next slide, please. Mental illness is by far one of the most misunderstood illnesses to mankind. Many bizarre and inhumane measures were placed upon the well-being of mentally ill people. Concepts of abnormal behavior. Next slide, please. Concepts of abnormal behavior have been shaped by the prevailing worldview of the time, even though some authorities of ancient times, such as Greek physicians Hippocrates and Galen, believed that abnormal behaviors reflected natural causes. Medieval beliefs held sway in supernatural forces. During this time span, the belief of supernatural causes, especially the doctrine of possession, eventually dominated medieval thought. This belief of possession held that abnormal behavior was the sign of a person hosting evil spirits or the devil. The Roman Catholic Church used this as empowerment, embodied in their teachings. There is nothing like fear to control your subjects. The treatment of choice for abnormal behavior was exorcisms. They were employed to pursue evil spirits that their victims were uninhabitable. Their methods included prayer, waving a cross, beating and flogging, and eventually starvation. If abnormal behavior persisted, there were even more persuasive measures to be put in place, such as the rack. Needless to say, many of the patients never survived treatment, let alone cure their so-called possessed behavior. The mentally ill population were at disposal of such cruelty. And we'll move on to witchcraft. In the late 14th century, officials of the Roman Catholic Church put into effect the belief that witchcraft was on the rise. Witches made pacts with the devil, practiced satanic rituals, and committed heinous acts, such as eating babies, casting spells, poisoning crops, and spreading disease. Of course, these were times of drought and famine, and the bubonic plague, known as the Black Death, swept across Europe, wiping out a third of the population. It was in 1484, Pope Innocent VIII decreed witches must be executed. In 1486, two Dominican priests compiled a manual for witch hunting. It was called The Witch's Hammer. It was first published in Speyer, Germany, to aid inquisitors in identifying suspected witches. And of course, mentally ill people fit the profile, and their behavior was proof enough to accuse of being leagued with the devil. More than 1,000 accused witches were executed in the next 2 centuries. Of course, many suspected witches confessed to practicing witchcraft, but only to relieve the agony of relentless torture of their inquisitor, who were determined to find evidence to support accusations of witchcraft. In the end, accusations of witchcraft became a means of cleaning up city streets of poor and homeless people, unmarried and elderly women who had to beg for food to stay alive. Mentally ill people were hard hit at this time. And we'll move on to asylums. Here the picture speaks for itself. By the late 15th and early 16th century, asylums or madhouses began to crop up. Many of them were former leprosariums. Asylums often gave refuge to homeless people as well as the mentally ill. Conditions were appalling. Patients were left to wander. Next slide, please. Unattended, chained to their beds and left to lie in their own waste. Many of the asylums used patients as slave labor to attend crops. Mental experimentation without any forms of antiseptic was common, and the premises were littered with unmarked graves or burned. In the late 1800s, the chains were ordered to be removed from the patients. In some parts of the world, eventually more humane practices were put into place. A model called moral therapy was introduced. It was proposed that patients should be treated with care and understanding in a pleasant environment, not shackled in chains. And my next slide is conclusions. Belief of possession and demonology persisted until the rise of natural sciences in the late 17th and 18th century. Society at large began to turn towards reason and science as ways of explaining natural phenomena and human behavior. The emerging sciences of biology, chemistry, physics, and astronomy offered promise that knowledge could be derived from scientific methods of observation and experimentation. The 18th and 19th century witnessed rapid development in medical science. Scientific discoveries uncovered the microbial causes of diseases and gave rise to the preventive measures. Emerging models of abnormal behavior also began to surface, including the medical model, psychological models, and social structural models. Everyone is affected by mental illness of some form, and I do not mean this in a bad way. It's a fact of life, and we are all responsible for one another's behavior and well-being. So we're going to move on to the brighter side of our project, and we'll introduce Jessica and Angelo. Thank you for being here and listening.
So what is mental health exactly? Now that we understand it a little bit better than we did many years ago, mental health now includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act, and it also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is very important at every stage of life, from childhood, adolescence, and straight to adulthood. Many factors contribute to mental health problems, including biological factors such as genes or brain chemistry, life experiences such as trauma or abuse, and family history of mental health problems as well. So as mentioned in the previous slide, our biology, social circle, and the psychological aspect all play a role in our mental health. And this is the biopsychosocial model plus, to include two more in there. So to explain a little bit about that, our biology is our physical health, genetic vulnerabilities, and drug defects. So mental health problems can begin before we're even born. Brain chemistry in a fetus can be significantly altered from drug use by the mother during pregnancy, or inherited genetics of mental illness or drug and alcohol abuse in the family. Even healthy adults with a single bad experience of drug use, or a significant injury or an extremely traumatic event could all have harmful effects on the brain and how it functions for the rest of our life. Biology also includes the importance of how we sleep, eat, and exercise. And then And the psychological aspect includes our coping skills, our social skills, family relationships, self-esteem, and mental health as a whole. So that's how we think and feel about our surroundings. So if we have difficulty regulating emotions, we have anxiety, depression, anger, that all falls into the psychological aspect. And that can also be taught by family members not coping with their emotions or having mental illness, kind of a monkey see, monkey do type thing, which also falls into the social aspect of our peers, our family circumstances, and our family relationships. Um, so things like turmoil in the family home, domestic violence, family members struggling with addiction, poverty, peer pressure, or living in a high rate crime rate neighborhood. Those could all severely impact our mental health. And the first plus on that picture is to be added is cultural aspect. And so culture is what shapes what we consider appropriate or inappropriate behavior, um, which you can see becomes very important to our how we act and think and feel about our surroundings. And then the second plus is the spiritual, so a person's beliefs and perceptions also affect our mental health. Next slide, Ange. Um, Positive mental health allows people to realize their full potential.
I'm really sorry you're having such a tough time. Or a perspective like being reminded that even the moodiest teenagers grow up. Advice such as a suggestion to plan a weekly date with your spouse, or validation like learning the other folks love reading train schedules too. Do you have enough support? Do you have enough support? Ask yourself if you have at least a few friends or family members who you feel comfortable to be with, give you a sense that you could tell them anything, can help you solve problems, make you feel valued, and take your concerns seriously. Living with a mental health condition can be taxing, emotionally, physically, and mentally. Experts have found that good feelings can boost your ability to deal with stress, solve problems, think flexibly, and even fight disease. Taking care of your body emotionally, physically, and mentally through creating joy and satisfaction is an important part of living with or without a mental health condition. So, um, connect to your community. Whatever your situation and your interests, there is probably a volunteer opportunity to make a great contribution in your community. Volunteering will help you build strong connections with others, a proven way to protect your mental health. Make it count. You want your volunteer time to make a difference, so ask questions to make sure the organization uses volunteers efficiently and productively. Ask what volunteers do, where and when they do it, and whether an employee is available with information and guidance when needed. Find a connection. To find a volunteer position that's right for you, contact your volunteer center. Look in the yellow pages under Volunteer Clearinghouse or Volunteer Center, or find options online. The next step would be to get the right match. Think about what kind of work you like to do based on your interests, skills, and availability. Consider making this a list for easier readability. Do you like to read, write, build things, repair things, or sort and organize? Do you have a special field of knowledge that you could teach to struggling students as a tutor or a coach? Are you especially concerned with homelessness or pollution? Do you have to do, do you love to garden or work in an office? Do you speak another language? Do you need to be at home and bring your volunteer work with you? So those are certain things you want to ask yourself when looking for a volunteer job. Create joy and satisfaction. Studies show that laughing decreases pain, may help your heart and lungs, promotes muscle relaxation, and can reduce anxiety. Positive emotions can decrease stress hormones and build emotional strength. Leisure activities offer a distraction from problems, a sense of competence, and many other benefits. For example, in one study observing twins, the one who participated in leisure activities was less likely to develop Alzheimer's disease or dementia than their fellow twin. And there is a meme there that I really like. And there is much satisfaction in work well done. Praise is sweet, but there can be no happiness equal to the joy of finding a heart that understands. So, some tips to enjoy life and relax: do something you loved to do as a kid. Run through the sprinklers, hang with the monkey from the monkey bars, or make a mess with finger paints. Do something you've always wanted to do. Bake a souffle, build a treehouse, or learn to knit. If you're not sure how, take a class or look for a local group dedicated to the activity. Watch or listen to comedy via video, podcast, or website, or get a laugh an old fashioned way through the comic section. Therapeutic massage. A massage can relieve muscle tension, stimulate the body's natural painkillers, and boost your immune system. It can also help you feel less anxious and more relaxed. A nature break, a blue sky, lush bushes, a scenic lake, walking in or even just looking at nature calms our nerves and relieves mental fatigue. In one study, workers with views of nature were happier with their jobs than workers with similar jobs but no nature view.
So it is important to take care of your mental health just as you would your physical health. Exercise is a big trend and stuff, and recently self care has been too, but it wasn't always the case. We were more concerned on being physically fit, let's say, than we were about being being and staying mentally fit. The relationship between mental and physical health. I found this on the CAMH website. Um, so that mental health and physical health are fundamentally linked. People living with a serious mental illness are at higher risk of experiencing a wide range of chronic physical conditions. And conversely, people living with chronic physical health conditions experience depression and anxiety at twice the rate of the general population. Some early warning signs that your mental health might be declining or that you could be seeking some help could be eating or sleeping too much or too little, pulling away from people and usual activities, feeling numb or like nothing matters, having unexplained aches and pains, feeling helpless or hopeless, smoking, drinking, or using drugs more than usual. Yelling or fighting with family and friends, experiencing severe mood swings that cause problems in relationships, having persistent thoughts and memories you can't get out of your head, hearing voices or believing things that are not true, thinking of harming yourself or others, and the inability to perform daily tasks like taking care of your kids or getting to work or school. And there's many more. The challenges of end of life with mental illness. Living with mental illness is can be difficult enough. It can also be manageable if you're taking care of it. But then when it's difficult and you add end of life with that, it can be quite challenging. For example, if there's untreated comorbidities, So this the presence of two or more diseases or medical condition in one patient. So there could also be diabetes, heart disease, lung disease, arthritis, dementia, among others, um, that you're trying to treat simultaneously and keep the person comfortable. It can prove some challenges.
So, end of life care in individuals with serious mental illness. Now, the authors were Daniel Shaley, Lauren Fields, and Peter Shapiro. People living with serious mental illness are at risk of premature mortality relative to people without serious mental illness. Chronic medical illnesses contribute significantly to mortality among individuals with serious mental illness. The standard of care for individuals with serious medical illnesses includes palliative care. However, the provision of palliative care has not been opportunized for individuals with serious mental issues or illness. Approximately 4.5% of the population live with serious mental illness, a term referring to mental health disorders that are chronic, impair function, and require ongoing treatment. The objectives are to review existing data on end of life and palliative care for individuals with serious medical illness and comorbid serious mental illness, to opportunize the role of the consultation liaison psychiatrist in such care with a particular eye towards redressing disparities. The methods in this narrative review, we draw upon a review of the literature on end of life and palliative care provision for individuals with serious medical illness and comorbid serious medical illness. We also draw upon the experience of the authors in the formulating best practices for the care of each patient. The results, patient, clinician, and system level factors are all contribute to disparities, including decreased access to palliative care, uneven continued engagement with mental health services, and low rates of advanced care planning. Your clinician liaison psychiatrists can use their expertise at the intersection of medicine and psychiatry to address such disparities by 1. Correcting misassumptions. 2. Promoting advanced care planning. 3. Engaging long-term caregivers. 4. Recognizing social needs. 5. Ensuring ongoing access to psychiatric treatment. And 6. Addressing suffering.
There are ways that you can support your loved one with mental illness at end of life. This is just a few. There's many ways you can be a support. But listening is huge. They may want to reflect on the meaning of their life or their experiences and their beliefs. It means a lot to someone to know that you care to listen to their life before it ends. Ask questions. They might find solace in knowing that their existence matters to you, and you might also learn a lot from their experiences and their beliefs. Be soothing and reassuring. Don't assume that you know what the person needs. If communication is still viable, ask how you can help them and listen carefully to their response. And most importantly, practice self-care. It is very difficult going through this. And preparing to say goodbye to someone you know and love. It's painful and just so very difficult knowing someone is nearing the end of their life. But that also gives us a chance to say things like, I love you, I forgive you, forgive me, thank you, and goodbye. So you gotta hang in there and take care of yourself. And these are some resources. If you wanted to explore a little bit further some of the information that we have in our slides, some of the articles and where we got our information from are found here. And that's it for today.
Awesome. So thank you so much for your presentation. Does anyone have any questions or comments? You can type them in the chat now. Francine said thank you. Awesome. So we'll leave the chat open for a little bit if people do have questions. But other than that, we will end for today. If you do have questions, you can email me at bereavement@nnpcn.com. And we can get those answered for you. If you'd like a copy of the slides, and the recording will be up if you would like to go back and see anything. So yeah, thank you, Jessica, Maurice, and Angelo, for your presentation. Yeah, very important topic. So thanks, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.